Okay, I call the meeting of the Community Police Review Board to order at 5:34. I almost said 17:34, sorry.
Yeah, that's what I wrote.
That's all right.
We do a roll call, please?
Oh, yes. Everything widgets. Oh, well, I like to use my little cards.
You got all this
yeah.
time and you're not organized yet? Please.
Ricky. Okay. Downing.
He's here.
Okay. Hobart.
Here.
Jensen.
Yes.
McConnell. Mekas.
Here.
Atkins.
Here.
Schwint.
Excellent. Item number 2 on the agenda, the consent calendar. Need a motion to adopt the consent calendar as presented or amended?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Wait. Gotta get new initials down. CA.
First motion.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any discussion regarding the consent calendar?
I know I had mentioned that I was probably going to speak during this pretty light consent calendar, so that's why I thought it was good timing for the annual report.
There you go.
We typically like to have the annual report out a little earlier, but our community outreach department are the ones who put that together, so I think they did a good job. You can find historical ones online on our website. You can find that one online as well, but I thought you guys deserved a printed copy, so give you something to thumb through over the next few days.
Well, thank you for doing that. Nicely done. A lot of information in there. Anybody else? If not, item number 3. Need a roll call.
Okay, Mekas. So you're aye or nay to the consent calendar?
We're under item number 2.
Right.
Step 3.
Item number 3, you mean?
We're just we're doing a roll call. That's all we're doing.
We're asking
For the consent calendar.
I said yes, no.
You did? Okay, I'm sorry, we didn't hear you.
Okay.
Good.
Atkins.
Yes.
Schwint. Downing.
Yes.
Hobart.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
And McConnell.
I'm giving Connie time to catch up. You're fine.
Okay.
All right, item number 3, new business. First item is the community forum discussion. If I'm not mistaken, the community forum, we do it annually. Typically, it was last done October 3rd of last year. So just need to have a discussion about the community forum. Do we want to stay the same location? It was done at Meeting Room A in the public library, I think.
I wasn't here yet.
You weren't here yet. Okay, it was down at the public library. That part I remember.
Yeah, it was in that community room there.
Yeah, I think it was, so typically at 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, I didn't bring my whole sheet with me.
Yeah, it was 5:30, just a regular meeting times.
So set up like a regular meeting. It's actually in the ordinance that we will conduct a community forum. It doesn't specify how we have to do it. So that's where we can say, do we want to change up the format? It is a public meeting, so we do have to have some structure to it, like we do here, and do a roll, and but as far as what we discuss and cover, Chief, I think you came last year and spoke a little bit, and a little bit of attendance. But we can certainly throw that out there for options. One is it's a little bit, like for me, it always feels a little stiff because we're sitting at a table with microphones and the chairs and people kind of you know.
We
like
just introduce
this.
ourselves and
Yeah.
talk about what the committee's about, and then if people have questions, they have to sign a paper, don't they?
They do,
And then
they
they have to get up and speak, right?
What's the purpose of the forum? What do we hope to get out of the forum?
I think what I
Community
recall
relations.
when we talked about that is just an opportunity for the community to come in and ask questions.
And just
Ask
see
about
us.
what the CPRB does, you know, what the options are, that kind of thing. And just, you know, a little bit talk, so a little bit of outreach.
But we have that anyway on Zoom as we have the meeting, so all these questions can be asked at any time during the year. The form usually turns out to be 90% Q&A to the chief of police. That's what it turned out to be. So I'm not sure how we are contributing, but if we have to, by law, I guess we have to do it. But that's what comes up. And usually it's one or two people who show up, and the usual people. Most of the time, these people are here anyway. So it's really, to me, a not very efficient way of answering people's questions. But
Yeah, I think it kind of did, wouldn't you, if you've been through it before, also other things that I've known over the years that have impacted it is activities in the community. So if there's some
Like a
controversial
social
issue
justice
going on,
issue.
then there's more
people there.
people attend.
So I
kind
was
of thing.
curious, like, can we reframe it as like an educational thing? Because I feel like, or something, like have some sort of, not just like an open discussion, like I feel like we need to be offering something, because otherwise people aren't going to come and just ask questions. Because
Maybe
like,
present
if there's
some-
not a social justice thing happening in the community, what's the likelihood that that's going to be at the forefront of people's minds to come to this forum?
So the
I don't know if that's
ordinance
allowed.
directs that you have the community forum and what the purpose of the forum is, and it says that you have to have it at least once a year
Yep.
for the purpose of hearing views on the policies, practices, and procedures of the Iowa City Police Department. That's what it says.
So can we step outside of that a little bit or offer that as an option, but also, you know, maybe as a way to approach that, offer something educational about it, you know?
Yeah, I was
Policies
just
and
thinking that
practices.
if you wanted to change the purpose for what we
not the
do,
purpose.
you know, that
Yeah.
would require a change in the ordinance.
Yeah. No, definitely like staying with the purpose, but somehow like just being creative about like getting people to actually come to it. And 'cause like I said, if there's not like a social justice issue happening, it's not at people's forefronts. Like they have enough going on. They're not gonna.
Especially in October, people are thinking football, and, you know, they're not.
And like we have
not
such
social
a
justice.
diverse population here in Iowa City. Like you have college students, but then you have like the geriatric population. You have such a wide variety that it needs to touch like everyone.
Is there certain policies, I think you said policies, practices, and procedures is what the ordinance says, right?
Policies, practices, and procedures, yeah.
So is there any sort of policies, practices, or procedures that you think from your perspective, Chief, would be helpful to, I think following your line of thinking, that it'd be really good to help educate the community about, that maybe is confusing or has changed, or we'd want to get some direct input. It doesn't mean we'll get folks to come, I hear you. But perhaps if we're doing something like that, folks might have more of an interest to come, and it gives us an opportunity to maybe clearly provide some clarification if there's been some confusion with a policy, practice, or procedure, and or an annual rotation of like every other year we'll cover sort of a overview of these policies, and then next year we'll do a different, set of policies where we do an overview. So anyway, just as I was thinking about what you had shared and what your input. I don't know if you would have a
Yeah,
perspective on that, Chief.
Saul kind of alluded to it. I feel like when I'm there, I hijack the meeting.
Yeah.
That and it was helpful to hear Pat read that. I think we do accomplish that because they typically have policy type related questions for me. So, and it's a good opportunity for you, because I think it's the opportunity for the community to communicate with you as a board with your access to what you guys do as a board. But typically it just turns into a big question and answer, and these guys feel like they're just sitting up there.
Sure.
Which is fine. If you guys are okay with it, I'm okay with it. As you'll see as we go through this, typically your consent calendar or consent agenda will have a handful of policies each time, and usually there's not a whole lot of debate. Now, the use of force policy or something like that comes up, there could be more. So there's certainly opportunity for that. But again, I do plenty of public engagement meetings. This is another opportunity that I'm happy to do, and I will do it. I'll be there. I'm telling you, I'll be there. But I don't want to hijack your meeting, but I'm more than willing to go there and answer policy questions. And that, maybe if you guys came up with some things that you wanted me to address, I'd be happy to do that.
Are there particular topics that you tend to get a lot of questions on? Release of body camera footage, like Brian Tabbitt called a couple days ago, kind of thing.
To be honest, not a ton. I mean, if you want to go across the hall, you can learn about the camera policy and things like that. I mean, those things,
Yeah.
just sometimes, like Jessica mentioned, if there's something going on in the community, specifically when I first started, we were doing it online, and there was much more participation, but that was on the heels of the protests and things like that, so that's it's obvious. But I think maybe you could look at some of the complaints that this board has received over the last few years and see if you see any trends or that you think would be worthwhile addressing, and I can certainly do that.
That's a good idea too, right? I think rather there's direct engagement, I think it shows that we're paying attention and responding to sort of our maybe responsibility. I don't know, I use that term loosely, but I think that's a nice idea where we're able to share with the public, listen, we are watching trends at the community forum. We're going to share, sort of some updates or direct policy related to these trends. And I suspect we'll always have, the frequent flyers that come and want to ask questions. And unfortunately or fortunately, you'll be always in the spotlight.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
They want to talk to you, right?
Well, and I think one thing, I think that's an idea, because what is it that seems to be a common thread in the complaints we do get? Is there a common thread, kind of thing, that we could speak to. The other thing is, it feels for me a little bit like it's a little stiff, right? We're, instead of all of us sitting in this row and us being a little formal, because it feels that way, is, if we relax the agenda a little bit, or just how we come across. This is who we are. This is how long I've been on the board. This is a little bit about me. And then if we all kind of took a section of stuff we know we need to cover, and, instead of my picking up a piece of paper and reading for it about what the board does about this particular issue, is speak accurately to it, but be a little more relaxed and a little more personable about it, because it always feels to me a little bit awkward. The most awkward one is when Pat told me one time I couldn't talk because I wanted to say something. That's been a while ago, but and then how do we approach, because it is a little awkward. I mean, I think it sounds silly, but having some food. How do we have the chairs arranged? How do,
Well, that's one thing, the chairs, we're up in this board and then they're all there.
And we're,
Instead of just, I don't know, I think we gotta arrange the room better.
Could we have some, are there resources we could make available? You know, even resources about, not only specifically for the board, but resources about mental health services and support, about particular social justice issues, you know, things like that. Maybe have just even some of that information available, and, you know, that kind of thing.
Are we allowed to make it like a community event? Is that something that's,
Well, yeah, I don't know why not,
Like
as long
frame
as
it
you're
that way.
fulfilling the purpose of.
because that's gonna get more people to, well, I feel like it should make more people aware of it and more engaged. Because I know last year I'd asked about like how it was being advertised and everything, but most of the organizations I work with had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
And so I don't see a way to, I mean, most people that I talk to, like, I'm a social worker, and most people don't know what we are until they hear me talk about it. So, like, I feel like there's a huge disconnect with our community.
Yeah, with some of the, okay.
I like the idea of trying to find a way to make it more approachable, folks more approachable,
Yeah.
right? I think clearly we have to follow policy and procedure, whatever that is.
Right.
But trying to encourage this openness and dialogue, I mean, that's how we do our best work.
Is there somehow we can get the community's input about what they want to hear about the board
Well,
before we do it?
so
Yeah.
there are two main purposes of the board. One is to hear and decide these complaints, and the second thing is to make recommendations about changes to policy.
Right.
So this forum is intended for you to hear the community's views on policy so that you can make recommendations if you think it's appropriate. That's the whole reason for having the forum, is to hear from the people about what's on their mind about police policy.
I think in response to that, though, I think it's important that if somebody says, well, I don't like this, I think you should make that change. You know, say, oh, we don't have that authority. How we answer that question is important, to invite either more dialogue or, you know, let people know that we're listening.
Yeah, we've had those kind of, you know, comes in waves.
Yeah.
People get fired up about that sometimes, and then we explain it, and it fades away, and then it'll fire up again a few years later. So I agree with you. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good part. I think that's an important part of the forum itself, is just explaining, and you do that. You all read what the charter is, or what you have to do. Those two main priorities are taking complaints, and again, in my opinion, and I've said this at the last forum, and I firmly believe that. I firmly believe your biggest power is the access you have and the suggestions that you can make, because that is what it is. Like, the complaint thing is a complaint thing. You guys can weigh in on it, but that's it. And the policy is the same way. You can weigh in, but having the access that you guys have monthly, and then my opinion, this is supposed to be like the conduit. You were supposed to be the voice of the community to the agency. And that's what I think the forum, and listen, we tried to do 2 forum meetings the last time, and that really,
That was a little bit too much.
yeah. So, but there are plenty of ways for people to engage, and sometimes it takes some sort of something going on, or something that someone really gets upset about, to fuel that engagement, because there's so many things going on. Like right now, there's a city council meeting.
Meeting, yeah. Okay. So,
Okay, so, yeah, you need to decide a date and location.
we're at the public library again. I mean, that seems to be
I feel like it's easy access, like there's bus lines, there's.
Yeah, people can get there pretty easy, yeah.
So I think if we would look at that as an option.
in years past, it was once a year, and I think it was in the spring, wasn't it? I thought it was always in April.
Well, that was the last one, was it?
But then we switched to doing 2, and so the last one we had was,
October.
and we had one in October and didn't do one in the
We
spring.
didn't do one in the spring.
Yeah, but it always used to be in April. So I don't know, doesn't matter to me. I'm
So if
just
we're
saying.
supposed to have one annually though, where we need to do them before the end of the year,
Yeah,
unless that's fiscal.
had seen at the February meeting this year is when you guys voted on having it in October of this year. So,
So October it is.
right, just have to pick a date.
Yeah.
So
Would
if
it-
you want to go with the library,
You have to, when is that room available though? However, that would be the next question, is
yeah.
And when is our regular meeting? October. So, because we gotta still have that, right?
October 8th.
Right.
So we have we'll get to that, but it's September 10th and an October 8th.
Yeah. And two, if we can avoid it being on, it doesn't, excuse me, have to be a Tuesday night either, because we're trying to avoid having it on a council meeting night.
So could we do this? Could you check on, look at the middle of October? And then check on room availability and also make sure that we're not bumping up against.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you picked, a Wednesday, or we wouldn't. Just, it's Tuesdays, of course,
It's only Tuesdays.
that they have their, yeah.
Can we tentatively look at October 16th? That's a Wednesday.
Sure.
October 16th it is. Boom.
We have to see if the room's available
Right.
and all
They
that.
have several meeting rooms there,
Yeah.
right next to each other. And
not
sometimes
sure.
we've been in the big one that absolutely was not necessary.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
And then can we check on, that'll also give us 2 more meetings before the forum to talk about, kind of lay out the plan for the agenda a little bit. About what specifically we're going to talk about, who's going to talk about what a little bit. I think one of the questions that comes up is like, well, how many complaints did we have, and how have you ever, said no, this is wrong, and found against. People ask those kinds of questions in that way. So just we could talk through, make sure we all are on the same page with some of that as far as what those kinds of issues that we might get questions about.
Sure.
We could look back through the
Last year
former
and see,
complaints
yeah.
and see if there's a common
Yeah.
thread there.
When we do have these
Coming
meetings,
up on that here.
Pardon?
You'll be coming up on that with the annual report. It lists all, you
Yep.
can see commonalities there.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
when we do have these meetings, we usually have pamphlets explaining what we do, what we're all about. We introduce ourselves. I think it might be advisable for us to speak as little as possible, since it is a forum listening to the community, to not lecture them.
Yep.
They have the pamphlet, they know what we're doing, and we're here to listen to them. So limiting the lecture and going on about what we do on a daily basis, and remind them that they can also zoom in on our meetings at any time during the year.
Can do that.
If somebody wants to zoom in, so technical question, so people can zoom into this meeting right now?
No.
No, we used to do that. We don't have Zoom.
We did that
Okay.
briefly. We no longer do Zoom meetings.
Right,
So
but
they-
they can still see the meeting.
But after tonight, the media people
Yeah.
here go through and edit this,
Okay.
and it gets on the City Channel 4's
Okay.
website,
Got it.
so then they can click on it and watch the whole thing.
Got it, but they can't log in now
we
to
don't
participate.
They can
Right.
attend. They can attend.
They can come here, yes. I just
Right.
didn't, when you said Zoom, I wasn't.
Yeah, we used to do it.
Yeah.
Okay,
But then it got so difficult that
Yeah, yeah.
definitely. Okay,
it didn't work.
got it, thank you.
Nobody participated.
Yeah, and that was the
We did
big
that for a
thing.
while,
Nobody
we
zoomed
kept
in. So
track, and we never had anybody
Yeah.
participate.
we did it for like a year and a half, didn't we? Or a good
During
year.
COVID.
Yeah, well, I mean, just lately.
Yeah, yeah, we did it for
We'd
quite
have
a
city
while.
staff that would have to do that, so taking a staff.
More
member that-
resources, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes good sense, yeah. Got it. Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
All right. How about the next item on the agenda is the draft of the CPRB fiscal year 24 annual report. A copy of that was included. And any comments, thoughts about that, questions? Is everybody good? And Connie's right, the information in that would also give us some potential insight. And that could be one of the things too, is have that annual report available for people.
Yep, it's on the website.
It's on the website, but I mean, actually have it available, you know, if somebody wanted a paper copy at
Oh.
the community forum, for example. So, no questions, comments? Okay. Need a motion to accept the CPRB annual report as amended, or not? So moved.
Second,
Okay.
Third.
Third.
really speak up.
Okay, roll call, please.
Atkins,
Yes.
Schwint, Downing,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
McConnell, Meckes.
Yes.
Okay, last item, under item number 3, Solid asked to have a discussion, have this put on the agenda, discussion about complainants that frequently contact the police and scenarios that should be going through DHS or other services. So is there anything you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, this is a long-standing issue. What prompted me to put that on the agenda is on a number of times with the complaints about police officers not being trained, needing social workers, etc. But what we are finding out is that there are people who that police officers are being called 5 times, 10 times, in one case that I know, it's between 50 and 100 times on the same person. So obviously there's some kind of social agency that's not doing its work.
So Saul, do you have anything new to add to that? Because you've had this
Yes,
on
I
the
do.
agenda 3 or 4 times.
I don't think
So
the new
we keep
new
going
member,
over the same thing.
Okay. Colette is not aware of that discussion. So I want to make sure that
Okay.
she has the background
That's fair.
on that. There are instances where there are children involved, and the police have to deal with these situations, which is well beyond their responsibility. So what I would like to do is, we don't have an actual responsibility, and I would not suggest a motion. I think from a parliamentary point of view, it's probably a resolution suggesting that when we do encounter this situation, that we raise the so-called red flag and correspond with the city council saying there's a failure of the system here, and we're not going to be silent about it. It's not our job, as we're not social workers, we're not the police, we're not any of these agencies, but it's our duty to bring that up and say we're not going to be silent when we see people essentially abusing their kids. And we'll just say sustained or not sustained. That's not enough. And it's not enough for the victims, so to speak, and it's not enough for the police as well, because something goes wrong, they're immediately accused of not being able to handle it well. So I want to make sure that people realize that in a particular case, one of which we've had to deal with, what does not show up is that the police had been called on this particular person between 50 and 100 times. Something is breaking down, we have to push the alert button. So my suggestion is to resolve that we alert the city council of the breakdown in the ability of the community to address these particular situations.
I don't think there's probably anybody here that disagrees with some of the individuals who could speak to this better than we could. Frequent flyers, somebody for a variety of issues, has frequent contact with the police. However, I think our challenge is, in some ways, there's specifics we can't talk about and cannot divulge that individual's information. I don't think any of us disagree with that there are people that, my gosh, you wish you could, help the individuals or get them to a place where they could accept help. But unfortunately, that's difficult for us to communicate that, especially based off the complaint information we see, because there's a lot of that we can't talk about. That's what I see as part of the challenge. For me, it's like, yeah, you wish the person that you see all the time that maybe isn't thinking clearly about a situation. You could do something for that person, but you can't force them.
Right. After somebody calls, do you guys have an avenue to go to help these individuals out? As the police, what avenue do we have as this committee to go to the city council? And I don't know what the city council would do. I don't know what they can do about something like that.
We can't make it just reports third hand.
No,
You
that's
can't make it
right.
just
You just
reports
can't.
third hand.
Yeah.
Police
I
are
just
also
don't.
mandatory reporters.
Right,
They have
yeah.
a social worker through community.
Right. And see,
So one of the things that is often missing from the reports that you guys get, like if you get, say there's a complaint where I might mention that we have engaged someone multiple times. I'm not telling you the disposition of every single one of those engagements.
Maybe you want me to call you and tell you.
We don't just wipe, as you can imagine, we don't just wipe our hands. Every single one of those, we have tried, and some of them you've watched on video where you see the officers trying to encourage someone to. But we can only do what we can do, and we can't force other agencies to, whether it be DHS, whether it be other social services, whether it be other mental health. Sometimes we try to get committals with our mental health partners. Sometimes people qualify for that, sometimes they don't. We are engaging those, and I appreciate your concern on this because it's our concern, and I wish I could tell you that wasn't the majority of our work. It is. The majority of our work is with a few people in the community that we're constant. You could walk across the hall and talk to the watch commander, and they could name you a dozen names of people we deal with almost on a daily basis.
You can do it right now.
Yeah.
I could as well.
Yeah.
But unfortunately.
And it's frustrating. It's frustrating for all of us, but there's only so much we can do. And council, we are encouraging those other agencies to try to do what they can do, but sometimes things are beyond their capabilities or don't quite meet a threshold for whatever, whether it be a committal, whether it be an arrest, whether it be someone going to the GuideLink. GuideLink has been another new avenue that we have, but it's a very high bar barrier, you have to meet certain qualifications to get there. We have a ton of options. I would say Iowa City probably has more options than many communities, but most of those aren't, people can't mandate somebody to do something unless certain criteria are met.
I'm not saying mandate, we don't have a mandate, whether I want to or not. There's no mandate, but I want to make sure that we don't remain silent, especially when I've seen cases where there were, a couple of kids, like 3 years old, involved in that, and like multiple times. And it's pitiful to see that, say, well, everybody's done their job, but what about the kids? Who is speaking out? Who is saying? Who is, pushing the red alert button? And on a number of occasions, on news, when you see some of these, mental cases, you've seen a number of times where there should have been, where there were warnings, and nobody acted upon it. Warning after warning after warning. And I don't want to be part of a commission that sees that and says nothing. In one of the cases where it looked really bad for the police officer, we had no information that the individual involved had, that the police had been called on this particular individual between 50 and 100 times. So we were making decisions on lack of information. And if it is between 50 and 100 times, there's a major failure here, and we have to say something. It doesn't have to be violating any kind of confidence. It just merely says we're alerting people about this.
How do you see that happening? Do you see that? So we've had, because we've talked about this multiple times.
Yeah, and we haven't done anything about it.
Because in some ways we can't.
And in some ways we can.
Let me ask you this though. How do you see that happening? Are you, when we do are you thinking of like when we write a report, that there's some reference in the comment
if it's not in
section?
violation of our policies, yes, we could include that in our report, saying it is unacceptable that no agency is addressing this problem after so many calls.
Well, I would just, and I don't disagree with that, but I would argue that agencies probably are trying to address it. Maybe not very successfully.
We don't know that.
Well, and that's
we don't know that.
Right.
But I want to make sure that we are on record as saying that.
And one of the things, what I heard you say, and that's on me, like you not knowing, I'm trying to give you all the information that I feel like I can give you to make a good decision.
Yeah.
And if you have questions, by all means, you can send it back to me to clear some things up. I think I'm learning as I go through this what I think you guys and City Legal helps me with some of these. Mm-hmm. They'll pick up like, hey, they're probably going to wonder about this. So I hopefully.
Well, the problem is when we discuss these things, you're not able to be here. So it doesn't come up.
Right. Well, one of the things, and Pat, you could maybe answer is there have been times where I have been at executive session, but I think it's just for specific questions, and Pat would know. But.
To address a specific question, and then you step out as soon as we talk. Yeah.
That's happened before. I don't. It's not common, but it has
very
happened.
rare. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And as I see it, all the problem is the reports don't include people's names. So what would council do with it?
Yeah. That's true, because there's information we cannot include. That's where, again, I don't think anybody here disagrees, but the reports do not have names. Statements would be, can be no specifics in the statements, so it can't say Saul needs additional support because he's, having this issue time and time and time again. We can't do that. We can't call you out by name. So.
Well, on a number of occasions we're told, you see something, you say something. it sounds all cute, but nobody's doing it. So when we see something, we say something, and what we say is something innocuous, general. We've seen situations that should be addressed by professionals that are not being addressed, and we are very concerned about that. I don't see anything
Is there a way
controversial about that.
in which we respond to the concerns that you're talking about, which I'm clearly new to this, but that could be a recommendation around a policy, practice, or procedure, right? Because I heard that's our responsibility, is to review policies, practices, and procedures. And so is there one of those things that we could provide a recommendation to the city council to look at more formally to respond to the concern you've alerted here? Not to suggest that we have a bad policy or a bad practice, that's not what I'm suggesting. But when I think about alignment with what you're discussing and what we're tasked to do, perhaps that's the best way to go about it, is providing that input to the city council around a policy, practice, or procedure that we feel like either needs to be changed or added or subtracted, whatever it might be. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I think you're referring to policies and practices of the police department,
Yes.
not of any other
No.
social services.
No, not at all. We're just talking about the police department. And I want to, I think, just to make it crystal clear, I'm not suggesting that the police department is doing anything wrong at this point. It could very well be that they don't have a resource that they need, right? Or a lack of a policy in order to support the work that they're trying to do. But that seems like the way in which we potentially could respond to this concern that you've brought forward when I think about it in the context of the work that we've been tasked to do on this commission.
You know, I think in some of the cases, we've talked about this a lot. We really have. It's been on the agenda multiple times. It's difficult because it might be a case that the individual involved files a complaint because of a situation they were involved in, and that individual, and forgive the term, is a frequent flyer. And so in some ways it's that individual, which ties up police resources, which ties up
Social
and
services.
that is part of the job. However, the person that comes around again and again, and the challenge is, what do you do with those individuals? Right? How do you handle that, kind of thing. I mean, it's difficult because in our charge, whether it's to acknowledge, and it's not just this community, it's a lot of communities, it's that although we have a lot of resources in this community, we also have a lot of individuals that need those resources. And we see some of those individuals. I don't know, I was trying to think of a way to say it that we could do that. I mean, there might be a way to even briefly speak to it in the community forum. I don't know, but if you try to formally put it in a document, we just have to, we'd have to be very carefully. That's why I thought of the comment section, on a particular case. If a case came up, I'm thinking of the same one you're probably thinking of, if there was a way we could word some kind of broad statement in there that protects the individual's information. But again, like Pat shared, we can't put names in. We can't, so I'm not sure what council would do with it.
But we can include that in our report.
I mean, I think you
Comments.
could express a concern about it, but yeah, you can't say names and you.
Right. I mean, I think that we have I want to underscore the fact that we have a responsibility to to point it out, to point out the failure of the system. It's unfair to the kids who are involved, some toddlers. It's unfair to the police officers who have to go there 50, 100 times. On the 75th time, they could get in trouble. All they'll read is that police officer got into a scuffle. They won't know that it was the 75th time. That I think is unfair. That I think should be brought up.
Well, I think if the chief's report came to you and said somebody had been, or the police have been called, 50 times on this individual, you could
That
include
usually
on the
doesn't show up in the report.
I'm saying
You
it
can put that
did,
in the report.
and then we've seen a little bit of that.
And that's why you know
reports
about it.
before.
Yeah, that's why you know.
I put it in one of the reports. One of the challenges that I have that we've seen recently over the last year and a half is people who are in the middle of a criminal investigation or filing a complaint. And it's really hard for me to write a report when they're in the middle of this criminal, I wish there was a way where we could, I don't know what the answer is. Don't know what the answer is. Sometimes it seems like there should be a way to say, there's this criminal action pending.
And the reason
so
they're
that
doing this is
public
because
reports
they're-
probably
yeah.
shouldn't be made available until then, but I also don't want to, someone who has a legitimate complaint, so I don't know the answer to that, but that is a challenge that I deal with when someone is involved in a criminal investigation and then they're filing a complaint and I'm having to kind of divulge some, when charges haven't been filed yet, that can be tricky. So I'm trying to walk that fine line. City Legal helps me with what they feel we can release. So that's a challenge. It's a frustration of mine too. I'm like, here we get this complaint when this person is in the middle of this complex investigation, and I'm having to try to explain that so you guys can make an informed decision, and it's difficult.
The other challenge too is, I can think of one particular situation, and there was a notation in the report about the individual and how many times that police had contact with this individual. And I occasionally get concerned that knowing that information, you have to be objective about it. So regardless of how many times that individual has had contact or been in a certain environment, we shouldn't judge this case based on that information. So that's kind of it's a challenge that comes up. I can think of people that I deal with frequently, and every time I see them, I'm like, oh, I wish there was something we could do to help this person, but can't. Not at that particular point that they are. So it's
difficult, yeah.
It's difficult.
Yeah. And another thing, like you said, there were some of these pending charges or cases. When we're doing our report, is there something in the bylaws that I probably didn't read that says that we can prolong the report until after his hearing?
There's time.
So then we can discuss-
time
Right.
frames for every step.
Right, but if there's a certain case, like that, like guy does a complaint, but he's pending going to jail or whatever.
Yeah.
Is there any time frame?
We can't really go to council and ask for an extension, which we would have to do,
I mean, you
right?
can, but there's.
But you'd have to say why.
Right.
Right, and
We want an
guy's got
extension
a
on this
pending.
case because this guy has a pending, or a gal, a pending,
I mean, I don't know if that would even be appropriate.
I've been working through those, and
Because
you
like you
might
said,
see
he
one here
can't.
real soon.
Because he can't.
You can make up your mind on how you think that report was written and if you have enough information, but you'll be seeing one soon.
Because, if I was a top-notch criminal, every time I got thrown in jail, I'd do a report, just so, it prolonged my, you know what I mean? Do the old Trumper thing.
the discussion.
I'm through with the discussion.
Pardon?
I want some action.
Well, we've had some ideas. We're talking about the reports. We're talking about what we might be able to put in the comments section. We have a potential coming up to look at, and keeping that in mind, how we might, write that report regardless of what our decision is.
So let me ask one other thing, I guess, to the chief. If there's ever a situation where you think that you would want more time because there's this pending investigation,
I can ask.
you can ask us for that.
Yes.
And that would be,
And again, you'll see one, I'm not telling any secrets here, you're gonna see one soon that is kind of one of those situations, but I felt like I could share enough information that I felt comfortable with, and I didn't feel like it was gonna interfere with any investigation. So, but yeah, and there have been times, I think we had one maybe last year where I had to ask for a brief extension, and it's up to you, to this board, to approve that or not. But I think I owe it to the community and owe it to this board, but certainly the community, to get those out in a timely fashion. Someone files a complaint, they want to know what happened.
Yeah.
They don't want to.
And it feels like, if you look at it, some of them take 6 months. By the time you go through the steps of filing the complaint, doing and it's a lot more complicated than people realize.
Yeah. Especially because of the steps that that it has to go through for this board. If someone files just a complaint with the police department, we can be a little more efficient, but you guys have to meet, and you have to, it's just the way the system's set up, and that's fine.
Yeah.
all right.
Okay. Item number 4, old business. I don't know if this is an appropriate spot, but I'm gonna throw it out there anyway. Can we get an updated phone list? We have new members, and this phone list.
Oh, I did that.
Huh?
I think I just had.
You did that?
Yeah.
Where is it?
Here, you want this one?
No. Oh, look, it's pretty. I didn't read all the way back.
You had to change something. You had to change.
Yeah.
Did you do
Yeah.
that?
I did.
That was a couple months ago.
No.
No,
This is
I'm
just
talking
recent.
about with Colette and
Yeah, we got Colette's on
the
there.
Yeah.
information.
We got it. You don't have yours?
After I made the corrections,
Oh, it's
like
right
the
there.
spelling of your
Okay.
address,
I just grabbed my book and looked, and the
Okay.
one I had in the front of my book was.
I emailed it to you,
Okay.
to all the members.
Okay.
Yep.
My bad.
Yep.
I missed it.
So,
If you
I just
can't
pulled my
find
book.
the
Okay.
email, let me know and I'll
Okay.
send it to you again.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to decide. It was like, oh yeah, we have new folks and that information.
Yep.
So question about that, if I could throw this out there. So we have this list, we have phone numbers on it and the information. Is that the list that gets sent to media when they want to talk to board members?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like Tavick or whatever his
Brian
name
Tavick.
is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it appropriate to ask sort of the process behind that at this point in time in the meeting?
No.
Okay.
I have to add it to the next
Agenda.
agenda.
Can we do that, please? Thank
sure.
you.
And so what exactly?
I think discuss the process for media inquiries and
Okay.
how we respond to those as a board.
And there's nothing that says that the chair has to talk to them.
no, there isn't.
It'll be
I can
good to
share
have
the
a
well.
discussion, yeah.
I can share the well.
That's the kind of thing that would be brought up during the board information
Yeah.
section.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Number 6. Yeah.
Number 6.
Okay.
Okay. Public comment. No comment?
That's a public comment that everybody's invited to.
Yeah.
Got it, yes.
Okay, yeah, there we go. Okay, board information.
So can I add that to the next agenda, please?
There we go.
Yep.
And then actually, it's funny is that's where I made my note to put it, and I was reading ahead, so. Anything else? Staff information.
Nothing?
Okay. Item number 8, the tentative meeting schedule, future agendas. I will not be available September 10th, but no reason to move the meeting for that, so. Ricky's got it.
He doesn't like it though, but he does have it. I have it. Okay, and then October.
I'll even hear, if we've
16th,
got a report, I'll even throw my name in if I'm not there and say I'll
Sure,
write it.
yeah.
There you go.
It's okay.
We have that in the notes. Perfect.
We have that in the notes. There we
Good, I
go.
put down there.
You know
Perfect.
what? I've worked with him long enough. He'd throw my name on there anyway if I didn't say it, so. Okay, October, I'm sorry.
We got that tentative meeting on the 16th, is that right?
Well,
For the
yeah,
community.
for the forum.
Yeah.
For him. Anything else? For the meeting schedule? Okay. We don't need a motion to change the dates because we're not changing any dates.
Nope.
So we're good that way. We don't need a roll call either. All right. Don't need to go to executive session?
Nope.
All right. Item number 10, we're going to jump ahead and need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.